transportation and tourism sector for a number of years. So I bring along that wealth of experience in the transportation sector as well as in the tourism sector.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you want to start the bowling?
I think we should all just dive in with this simple stuff. We'd love to know what is the purpose of the International Airport Development Company? What is the
Okay,
purpose?
well, probably what I should begin the whole process. Um, in relation to the International Airport Development Company, it was a company created by the government of Dominica to oversee all the aspects of the development of the new airport. The IADC, as we call it, International Airport Development Committee, was literally established to assist the government of Dominica in the development of the new international airport by undertaking the management of the contracts associated with the airport development, i.e., the design and constructions. Those primarily remain with the government of Dominica, but the IADC is to provide oversight and assurance and quality control responsibilities related to the airport development project, as well as additional responsibilities related to regulatory and commercial operations. And so, um, based on that, so far we have the airport feasibility study and a master plan have been completed by Landrum and Brown, and there are a board of directors that was appointed with some 20 members representing a cross section of Dominica, i.e., public service officers from tourism, public works, planning, finance. We have public utilities, DOMLEC represented, the WASCO, the private sector organizations like the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association, the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce. We also have skilled professionals coming from legal as well as aviation. And we have on that board as well a community representative from the Wesley Woodford area. And so basically, the IADC is to bring focus on the project while liaising with various ministries, which also provide a level of oversight in addition to the various government committees established. So the IADC really is an oversight arm for government, providing oversight in relation to the project.
Okay. I didn't hear you mention any persons from the, I would say, architectural or engineering society. Are those persons on the board as well?
Well, basically, what we've done is utilize from the public governance, utilize the public service officers. And like I said, we do have, for example, persons from the Public Works Department, and we have also various technical committees that are established. So we have persons within those areas.
Okay.
So in addition to the public works, you have also from planning, a representative from planning as well, ministries of finance and ministry of tourism, all represented on the board.
Okay. So, Mr. Johnson, you've been employed from since I think it's March, right? March 2021. Can I ask, what have you been up to thus far?
Yeah.
You.
So the project as structured is you can think of it in probably four distinct phases. All right. The first one being the preparation for the construction. The second one being the actual construction. The third being the commissioning of the airport, and then the final being the operations. So we're currently in the preparation stage, and what that entails is looking back and ensuring that all studies, relevant studies, the site, the master plan, the designs, the concepts, everything is aligned with the government's objectives. So a lot of that preparation work has been ongoing. The coordinating with the ministries in terms of site and land acquisition. As you can imagine, the location of the new airport is going to traverse the end of the Wesley Village. So about 70 homes or 70 properties in the area are being impacted. So coordinating on the relocation process associated with it. So a lot of that work has to be done in advance. to ensure that that when we get to the construction phase, all our ducks are in line. You'll appreciate that airport development in Dominica has been around for some a conversation for some 50 odd years now, and a lot of great work has been done in the past. So it makes no sense reinventing the wheel unnecessarily. We need to ensure that we leverage all the good work that has been done in the past, ensure that that is collected, validate where required, and augment where required. So folks driving past the Wesley area will see that clearing works has already started. That is to ensure that the plans for the geotech, the environmental impact assessment study, all of that work has to be done in parallel, because we'll be working in a relatively tight time frame to be able to deliver the project.
Right.
So I mean, I'm asking this question primarily because there's been a gentleman from the first day this show began who calls in to reminisce about the previous work done on another site. So this question, I guess you expected. Why was this site chosen? Why not one of the other previous sites, including the one chosen by the previous government?
I think it should be more like, why is this site more appropriate than the previous site?
Right. So I will chime in on Mr. Badwell, who probably has the longest tenure in terms of airport development in Dominica, can chime in. Actually, he shows up in some of the reports that were done. But you will appreciate that technology has improved over the years. The last site selection was done, I think, some 20 odd years ago. But what happened is over 12 different sites were identified, right? And actually, there's a very detailed report that the Prime Minister presented to Parliament back in April last year. So if anyone is interested in the excruciating detail, that is printed, I think it was printed in the Chronicle of April 26th of last year. So there's a very detailed point by point, ball by ball chronology, if you will, of the site selection process. But the Cliff Notes version is over 12 of the proposed sites were assessed. Several studies were done, including the Sir Alexander Gibbs and Partners study of 1988 to identify one of the sites. Planning and Stanley also did one in 1998, which is the one that you're probably referring to as the perfect site. And then in 2017, 2019, we had Landrum & Brown also conduct an assessment. One point I should make, though, is that all of the main sites or serious sites in contention are all in the same general area of Dominica.
Exactly.
Right? So although there have been sites like as far as La Plaine and Douglas Bay and Cabritz and Point Rong and Grand Savan, the main sites that had any traction or any merit to it have all been in what is referred to the shoulder of Dominica, right? So from an aviation standpoint, the locations are almost all within like a 2-3 mile radius, okay? But what was done, though, was a committee was pulled together by government back in 2008 to go through the Stanley and Planning and the Sir Alexander Gibbs report. It was a 13-member committee to do a review of all the sites, including the director of surveys on that committee, the CTO, engineer, Mr. Blackmore, chief physical planner, airport manager. I think they had a pilot, Mr. Badwell, DASPER, and other stakeholders were all involved in going through the various sites. And one of the key takeaways from that was that the Stanley and Planning, I'm going to read it just to make sure I don't misrepresent. The Stanley and Planning survey proposed a runway orientation that calls for a curved, non-precision approach for landing, which classifies the airport as a visual airfield. So basically the orientation that would have been selected for that new international airport would be a bigger, more glamorous version of what it obtains in Melvin Hall or Douglas Charles. So when you land from the mountains in Douglas Charles, that curved approach coming in is what would have to be replicated for the new airport in the Stanley and Planning site. The airfield cannot meet full instrument landing capabilities with the highest recommended procedure. The proposed airport meets conditional ICAO requirements, not full, but conditional ICAO requirements. There are serious surface obstacle infringements issues pertaining to mountains of Mont Audiable, Mont Destiny, and Diablo Terre to a lesser extent. There are likely frequent closures of the airport for safety concern due to inclement weather, heavy rainfall, and lower cloud cover. Because the location that has been recommended was at a much higher altitude than the site being currently proposed. It was one of the touchdown points was at the altitude of 127 meters, whereas this location is an altitude of about 52 and 45 at one end meters above sea level. These surrounding terrain concerns will contribute to, among others, a displaced threshold, meaning a section of the runway would not be usable space, right? So because of the approach, you couldn't use the entire runway as designed. You'd have to land further down the runway, which from a landing perspective doesn't make full use of the airfield as designed. Given limitations, the location may require high-level negotiations with airline operators in order to get included on their schedule and the route. And I can speak personally to that last note, in that when your airport is challenging, your negotiations with airlines become that much difficult. So like everyone is excited about the American Airlines direct flight from Miami. For many years, there have been negotiations with airlines to try to get that direct flight service, right? And one of the main challenges has been not necessarily the airline, but getting the exact aircraft with the exact capabilities to be able to operate for that length of route and land in Douglas Charles. So that immediately narrows the amount of airlines you can talk to, right? When there are technical constraints to the airfield. So net, the challenge from a technical standpoint, whilst technically feasible, would have to be done with constraints, right? Whereas the other side now, which you can see behind me, and that is actually an overlay of the location, you will have a precision direct landing in, no curved, right? So it will be precision guided into the runway with a straight on precision. Obstacle-free air surfaces, full instrument landing capabilities, 24-hour all-weather facilities, and satisfies unconditional ICAO standards and recommended best practices. I indicated this as a much lower elevation, so even in terms of the utilization of your runway, the air is more dense the lower you go, so you get more lift for takeoff. And also at the lower elevations, you can imagine, Dominic, although this looks relatively flat, the higher up you go, the deeper the valleys, the steeper the hills. So from an earthworks perspective, a lot more terraforming would have to be done at the higher elevation. And then from an ecological standpoint, because you're higher up in the mountains, you'll have to be a little bit more careful in terms of the runoff from the construction site, because that location would have been above some water catchment areas and streams running down into various villages. So that really was some of the reasons why. And then the point I was making earlier on, and Mr. Babel can chime in on that, is that when Landrum and Brown came and looked at these studies and the reports and did the analysis, they were doing that in 2017. That's a whole 17 to 20 years later. And they had the benefit of LiDAR, radar. They had the benefit of analytical tools that would require a lot more processing back then than now. So not only could Landrum and Brown look at a specific site, they could also run scenarios on various orientations of the and alignment of the runway, and very quickly get an assessment of not just the obstacles, but also have a sense of the amount of cut and fill that will be required for various alignments. So the optimization of the current site was something I think, from a technological standpoint, could be much easier done than would have been done back in 1998. And that's not to knock what was done back in 1998. It's just a matter of fact. Look at your cell phone that you hold today and look at the one you had in 1998. That'll give you a little indication.
I hope this puts it into
No, well, I don't think we'll put it to bed, but I think it was a very, it was very informative, that explanation.
Kenny, I would like to add something. One of the other issues that we had, and I was fortunate back then to serve under the chairmanship of Mr. Lawrence, who may his soul rest in peace, is that the likelihood of frequent closure. You know, currently with our Douglas Charles Airport, we have frequent closures for airport safety. That is concern due to inclement weather, heavy rainfall, low cloud cover. And given that factor in the northeastern part of the island, including in that report, standing and planning, it is indicating that the airport would likely to be closed on a frequent basis because of those issues. These are current issues that the airport may have faced, and the airport that was proposed then was going to have the same amount of problems in a different location. And also, I think Sam alluded to it earlier, that given the surrounding terrain, concerns are contributing in terms of a displaced threshold. That is, they would not be able to use the entire runway. Just the same problem we have at Douglas Charles today, coming from the mountain end. You can't use the full length of the runway. The length of the runway is 5,741 feet from if you take it from the sea end. But if you're landing from the mountain end, you would have only about 4,700 feet to be able to land. That creates an issue for an aircraft because you're now short of a distance in terms of landing distance for that aircraft. So that was significant for us in terms of looking at the proposed site then. And in terms of the current site, I think that's where the significant difference comes in that a number of the things that is being looked for from an ICAO perspective. Sam indicated we have full instrument landing capabilities. That is, we would be able to take the precision approach, whereby we would utilize vertical and lateral guidance systems to guide the aircraft down to the airfield as low down as 200 feet. So that gives you the kind of guidance system. And even if you would have some low cloud cover, it would not really matter because information would be generated through the aircraft system from the ground navigational aids to be able to allow the pilot to bring that aircraft to the point where he can actually and practically see the field to be able to land that aircraft. And now we know these days we do have aircrafts that really do not need intervention of the human person to land the aircraft once you have these guidance systems in play. So in fact, we were looking for an airport that would provide us with 95+% landings in the situations. That is what the new airport provides for us. It also provides obstacle-free surface airspace services, which was not evident in the other one, and which was one of the things that were flagged before. And also the orientation of that runway is a straight approach into to the airfield, as opposed to the curved approach that was there
Yes.
from
Mr. Johnson, explain that.
other one. So
Explain that.
these are significant differences in terms of meeting with the international civil aviation standards and recommended best practices. And so we are, in fact, the government made an informed decision based on all of the factors that they had to consider. And that is why when they employed Landrum and Brown, the instructions of the government were very clear that the runway length is capable of providing air service to and from the United States, Canada, Europe, Asia, and that, in terms of the landing facilities, we wanted to ensure that aircrafts could continue to land despite the poor visibility that may exist with cloud cover and so on. So I just
Okay,
want
so we have to go to a break, Mr. B. Thank you for the information. We go to a break, and when we come back, we'll go into some of the more nitty-gritty questions about the justification for actually having an international airport and some of the things like the costs, etc.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And we're back here on the other side, here on Q95. Tonight's topic, it's all about then and now, the international airport. And the panel is joined tonight by two, I find, a distinguished guests. I think it's a very new thing for Q. Mr. Johnson, who is the CEO of the International Airport, am I saying that, development company, as well as Mr. Benoit Batwil. Ooh, long time I ain't seen Mr. Batwil, Where have you been? Quiet, the CEO of DASPER. So we're talking about then and now, the international airport. I want to jump back in with some questions because I think Mr. Johnson brought up he has been working on the preparation stage. And that means like looking at all those reports. So I started to think about the economic feasibility, that study. Because I've heard people say, well, years ago, they said that the air travel demand did not, justify us having an international airport. Why now then? What's the difference now? And is it feasible?
Yeah, one of the things that that has happened over time in terms of the destination Dominica is you will notice, and actually there's been comments about, well, we're building too many hotels, but that's a separate conversation we can have. There's been significant investment, and we have probably one of our larger hoteliers on the program, but there's been significant investment in developing the destination and the product. Sam, for example, just prior 2017 would have had 35 rooms, Sam, at Jungle Bay?
Correct. 89 now. Yes.
And you're right. So you're right now at 89 now. We know, and Sam is an internationally acclaimed hotel. Say it again?
Jungle Bay, not Sam.
Jungle Bay. Sorry, I need to get the brand. I usually think of Jungle Bay and Sam as being synonymous. But so we now have prime hotel products like Jungle Bay, Secret Bay, Rosalie Bay. We have Kempinski. These are all premier hotel products that are operational. In the pipeline, we are probably going to be one of the few Eastern Caribbean islands with not one but two Marriott properties. Also having development in Salisbury, a Hilton. There is in the Soufriere area in Sam's neck of the woods. There's also another establishment that just recently opened. So I think as a destination, there's been a significant investment in improving the attractiveness of the destination in terms of international hotel-ready rooms. And a short answer to the question, do we have too many? Absolutely not. We're just beginning. And we can talk about that a little bit later.
But I think, Mr. Johnson, even though we have many rooms or whatever that you just explained there, does that mean that we're going to have many visitors?
Right.
I think that's a whole other aspect now, the marketing of the destination.
Yeah. So one of the things, the marketing of the destination absolutely is important. But when viewers turn on their television in South Florida and Miami, they usually they're bombarded actually by ads from Sandals and these major resorts. And I know Jungle Bay will soon form part of that for Dominica. Attracting tourists to not just the destination, but also the accommodation provided. I know I have several colleagues who are Marriott loyalists who try to find out, well, which destinations have a Marriott for them to plan where to go to. So the property drives a lot of traffic. And then separate apart from that, we tend to sort of talk down to Dominica as a product. If you will speak to many of our Lucian guests who visit Dominica or even regionally, and yourself, I sense a Trinidadian accent.
Yes.
Most of them, that's one of my second homes actually, by the way. Mm-hmm. That is, they are always in awe with the natural product that's available in Dominica. Right, but we're not taking that for granted. So one of the major phases in parallel with the development of the airport is also the development of routes. Right, so American Airlines is just the beginning. Right, American Airlines coming direct with the aircraft that they have is significantly going to improve the ability of visitors from North America to Dominica, where we've traditionally underperformed. So I'll just throw out a statistic. Dominica is sitting in a sea where over 13 million stayover visitors came to the Caribbean in 2019. 30 million. Of that amount, North America alone represents about 50 to 60% of the stayover visitor traffic. In Dominica, it's only about 17%, right? Your North American traveler likes convenience. They guard their vacation time very, very carefully because they don't get a lot of it, especially from the US. So trying to determine where they go to and the ease with which they can get to it and not get stuck is a big factor, which air access is going to help. And we're not building and then trying to grow demand. We're in parallel trying to grow demand whilst the airport is being built. So there are conversations being had right now with other airlines to ensure that by the time the airport is finished, we won't be scurrying looking for partners to come in. Hopefully the American Airlines flight not only survives or is sustained, but it also is able to grow. There is nothing that says we couldn't have 2, 3, 4 flights a day on that aircraft if the demand can be pushed forward.
So to go in line, thank you for that, Sam. To go in line with what Tanya asked, going a bit more in depth, what's it likely to be in terms of cost for this airport development? And so that falls into the economic feasibility, because of course cost is going to have a bearing on your rate of return in terms of investment that is being made. And can you explain the kind of partnership that is involved in developing this airport and how the economic model is supposed to work in making it viable, economically viable?
Yeah. So I'll go, and Mr. B can jump in as well. So when you look at the economic feasibility of this model, when you look at some of the studies, it was estimated that up to $8 billion could be accrued over a 20-year period of the construction of the airport. The feasibility studies that were done, prior feasibility studies, were showing actually that even at debt finance at 14%, it was economically feasible to build back then, that same location that was presented earlier on. The funding this time around is actually equity funding, so 0%. In terms of there's no borrowing associated with the project. The current budget that is being floated around publicly is just shy of about 1 billion EC dollars. And in terms of the analysis that has been done, it's fully anticipated that from the operating costs, we should be able to not just operate, but to grow based on the operations. Mr. Badru can speak to.
Mr. Johnson, you said that that's just floating around the 1 billion. So what is it? Is it 1 billion?
Well, the contract, the developer is currently in the RFP stage. So there's a budgeted amount, and then there is the contracted amount. So we haven't pinned down the final amount, but that is the ballpark within which you don't want to be throwing out additional numbers out there where you have international contractors bidding and fine tuning their bids for the project. And then the other thing that we need to be very careful about is when people hear $1 billion in airport language globally, they automatically think US, 1 billion US. So when you think of expansion projects for major airports, that is like right in the ballpark. But we're actually talking about 1 billion EC, right? As the budget for the landside, airside development, runway, terminal, and the various facilities to support the operations of the.
I think plus or minus 300,000 US.
Would be
300 million US.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. In terms of the type of aircraft and the type of expanded capability for the airport, what are the expectations? And bear in mind, the airport now it's in terms of development time, I assume it's going to take 5, 6, 7 years. You can elaborate on that.
Can we go back? Because
Yeah.
I feel like we didn't really touch on the price, totally. Because I actually wanted to ask about what do you call them? MMC, that relationship. I would love to find out, and I think I'm going to say this outright. I think the situation is different now. It's like if the public has hired MMC, I feel like we are entitled to know what is the percentage they are going to earn, working for us. So I'd like to find out about that. I don't know. I just want some more information.
I don't know if the model works like that, but Mr. B can talk to it.
Educate me. I'm just
No. Basically, the government has retained Montreal management consultants to basically be the developer, to design and construct the airport. And in terms of the agreement is between government and Montreal management. Again, like I said, within the remit of the International Airport Development Corporation, we are there to see the project and to ensure that we get value for money, that in fact those projects meet with the requirements of the International Civil Aviation Organization, the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, and to ensure that from a technical standpoint, all of the persons within the IADC can provide the technical guidance to government in terms of the decision making. But principally, the government of Dominica is, in fact, the primary holder of this project. And so we would not be able to discuss with you the inner details of that project from the standpoint of its financing arrangement with government. And I would rather you get from the government a direct representative there that will be able to provide that sort of information for you.
Okay. Thank you. You can go. You're going back to your. Sorry, you can go back.
No. I mean, I think it's a legitimate question. I think from a point of view of the airport itself and going forward, my question is related to the fact that you, Samuel, mentioned that things change as time goes by.
Mm-hmm.
How change resistant is going to be the design and development of this project, even from the point of the development of aircraft and the routes. Things are going to change over the next, how many years do you expect this project to last, for example, and how change resistant is it going to be?
Yeah, so one of the design criteria that we've been that has been echoed with the developer and the design partners is that we don't get to have too many bites at the apple, right? So we need to ensure that whatever is being designed and developed is something that we can grow into for the next 20, 30 years, right? If you look at how long Douglas Childs has been around and the expansions done to it, we need to ensure that not just the runway, but the terminal would have sufficient capacity. Allocations are made to ensure that if there's future expansions, that there is space for it. So even the build structure that we're trying to design for is not really to meet the demand today or next year or 5 years or 10 years. We have a planning horizon that we can grow into something for the next 20, probably even 30 years. The aircraft, and actually that's a good point you made, Kenny, about the technology and the aircraft. Back in 1998, BWI was still flying the L1100 with the 3 jet engines. A lot has changed right now. The design aircraft for the airport then would have been the Boeing 767. A lot of these aircraft have already retired or have stopped production. So we look forward to which aircraft would be in service and coming in service, particularly to be able to operate longer routes. So we've been talking about the Boeing 777 series, which is used primarily, and the Boeing 787. We have the Airbus A350. Actually, the A350 could easily serve as far as Asia into Dominica if the need arises for it, and operate on the runway as being designed. The capacity and technology also being looked at for the operation of the terminal. Also technology that would not have been there back then, right? So we want to ensure that the terminal design, of which we've been tweaking and going back and forth and having consultations with key stakeholders and users of the airport before going to a wider audience. We want to ensure that it captures not just the current need, but also the future need and the future processes that we can envisage based on the latest available information.
Okay, so thanks for that again. Again, another nitty-gritty question. I know a lot of people are asking, what's going to be the benefit for contractors, for people who want to get involved in this project early on? Because, in terms of information, not many people know how they can get to the key, not only decision makers, but the project owners, the project managers, is there going to be a process to engage local labor so that this project gets owned not just by the developer and the government, but by the general population?
Yeah, so the project from a job creation and economic stimulation standpoint has already started doing that, right? And I mentioned like the 4 phases of the project development. In this phase, if you were to take a leisurely drive to the Wesley area, the site, the Joe Button site, which is currently a whole housing development, has been going on, which is being built almost 100% by local contractors, right? So the construction for relocation are opportunities that will be had. The site clearing and testing is also being done by local contractors, and there is a bias to using contractors and labor from the area, from the community, right? For obvious reasons, to ensure that there is that ownership and attachment to the project. There have been surveys, and there will continue to be surveys, which are going out to ensure that everyone who is interested in participating, and we'll be doing a skill survey to identify contractors, laborers, technicians, who would get first pick in terms of first consideration.
Can you explain what you mean by a survey?
Yeah, so there'll be a link where we would be able to, survey is probably not the best word, but they would have the opportunity to provide and express interest in various services that they offer. So I am John Brown. I have
proposals then. So you'll be able to send a proposal.
Right. So we want to have an exhaustive list of those individuals and companies locally who are interested in being engaged. So that is for the preparation phase. Then there will be the actual.
Which is already happening, right?
Which is already happening.
So can you give us the information as to how then someone who already has a business or involved in construction can send a proposal? Where do you all have something on a website now? Where can they go? What can they do?
Yeah, currently it's basically by email. You'd send an email to info@iadcdominica.com, or the MMC director on the area, which is handling the construction for residential, is also taking some of that, and the ministry actually has also been assembling a list of those names. So there are several avenues that one could reach out to get engaged. But I don't want to lose the point, though, that although this is the initial preparation stage, there's also the construction stage where the major contractor will come in and be looking for subcontractors, and where you'd have a direct engagement in potentially for the excavation, the civil works associated with the site. And then there's all the support services. We've already seen in the Wesley area, vendor stalls going up, because where there are workmen, food and drink is required. There's also an influx of labor going into the area, and that is expected to increase significantly during the construction phase. And then when we get to the end of the project, in parallel to the development of the airport, we also need to look at, well, who's going to be in the operations of the airport. As you can imagine, the terminal is going to be significantly, and the operation is going to be significantly larger than what obtains currently at Douglas Charles. So there'll be additional opportunities in terms of security, aviation, retail establishments in the airport, duty-free operations, and the like, customer service. We have the new executive lounge that opened at Douglas Charles. There'll be an additional wider, bigger one at the new one, in addition to the other lounges that would be made available for private or FBO operations. So there'll be numerous opportunities for jobs at every stage, at every phase of the construction and development. From actually someone who is thinking about going to school and studying for aviation, by the time they graduate, would be right in time for the completion and commissioning of the airport. So these are all different things for consideration when people are looking for opportunities.
Yeah, and Sam, there will be opportunities for engineers, electricians, plumbers in the aviation sector. There'll be a number of opportunities that will present itself. Currently, I mean, in the construction phase, you will have a lot of the skills workers being able to find employment. We're just in the very initial phase in terms of the development, and already, as you've indicated, people are getting employed because of the housing that's going up in the Joe Burton area. We also have now land clearing. Almost 50 acres plus of land has already been cleared, and there is preparation going on to acquire, to take on more land in terms of clearing. And so there will be opportunities that will be coming on stream to be able to provide for persons in employment. But I think a lot of emphasis has to be placed on, as we move along, in terms of from now, persons have to now begin to look at the opportunities that will present itself, so that persons can become engineers, take on studies that would correlate with work that they can find at the airport. And there will be lots of opportunities in terms of the types of jobs that will be available.
I think Sam wanted to say something.
Yes,
Sam. Sorry, 1 second, Mr. Bano.
Good evening, guys. I've been listening intently because this is a very, very, very important topic. And a lot has been said, and I would just like to take a moment and kind of put it in a nutshell so that people may be joining the program later on and so on, or some of the things that have been said, we may understand it, but the common man and woman may have some difficulty with it. So I just like to go back and to tie things in maybe before we go forward. But basically, an international airport, an airport that can accommodate large aircraft, it was determined that that's something that Dominica needed. Certainly the past 3 governments have all determined that, and at different times, the initial plans were for Compton Point, I think. Then the government changed, and the immediate past government decided it was better to go in another location, and actually acquired real estate to put it in that location. And subsequent to that, this administration came in. They made an economic decision to hold off on that for some time, and more recently, they found a way by entering into an agreement with a developer through the CBI program that was going to come in and basically develop the airport for Dominica without any taxpayer or borrowed money having to go into the project. Basically, the developer would take on the sole responsibility, the sole risk of raising all the funds to develop the airport, and an agreement was signed. The estimate for that agreement is around $1 billion EC dollars. Of course, a hard number, Tanya, could not be established, because when you do a project of that scale at this stage, when you have a lot of earth to move and so many moving pieces, you're going to have a range. This is how it's done. And the developer now have negotiated. There's going to be a certain allotment of CBI applications that they'll be allotted to do this. And this is an agreement. I suspect it's going to be a confidential agreement between the developer and the government for a host of reasons. The government then established a development company, which is what Mr. Johnson is the manager of and Mr. Badwell is the chair of. And that company is the government's sort of agent to have oversight over the development of that airport, and to oversee and ensure that that developer does what they're supposed to do, and we get an airport that's functioning well. That developer have been in the process of doing a number of things, including replacement homes and so on and so forth. But the developer is not a contractor. And so the developer is in the process now of engaging a general contractor that's going to be responsible for constructing the airport. And this is something that's going to be signed maybe in the next month or so. That contractor is going to be hiring all the subs because they're going to be responsible for the construction. So what we have seen happening, is basically the initial stage, pre-construction. and the little earth moving, the building of homes, the building of the labs, all of these things are basically done by the developer, but it's not really the meat of it. The bulk of it is when the agreement is signed with a contractor, which hasn't been done yet, and that contractor is going to then engage and seek to engage the capacity, the skills. Hopefully, you know, I'm sure that there's going to be some target, if not a hard number, of local people, because most of these agreements certainly have guidelines for a certain percentage of local people, but the government is interested in having as many local people hired. Certainly from the developer too have expressed that in a number of forums, and certainly even in the pre-construction stage that we're seeing now, in terms of the Joe Burton housing and the bulk of the work that we've seen done, certainly it's been manifested as such. So I just wanted to lay that out there. All three sites you could have built an airport in. So all three sites you could have built an airport in. However, the site that's being chosen now is the site with the least risk for incoming flights, so that we don't have the cancellation of flights because of weather. Because Dominica is a rainforest island. When you have to go through those steep mountains, as you do now, I travel frequently, and I tell you, I got stuck in Miami 2 weeks ago because of that, because again, weather and route, and that keeps happening, and all Dominicans know that. And Dominica is known as the island that you have to navigate through the mountains and through the coconut trees to come into the airport. And as a result of that elevation in the mountains, the airplanes, when they dive down to land, they cannot catch the front end of the runway. So you cannot even utilize the full runway. So you can see runway is 5,700 feet, but you can only use 4,000 feet of that. So practically the airport that's being constructed now is one where a pilot can be way out, look straight at that runway coming in, and can land. And even if you have inclement weather, now you have the instruments that will enable the flights to come in without having to be canceled. So that's the benefit of the new site, the main benefit. I just wanted to sort of break this down into the common language for the common.
It was a good breakdown, Sam. It was a good breakdown. It was a good breakdown, a nice synopsis.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
We have to go to break in a
yes.
second, and then when we come back, we're going to have to open the lines.
Calls.
So gird your loins, as they say.
I have a few questions still as well, but we're going to give our callers a chance to do that. So guys, keep it locked. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Other Side. And of course, you guys know who've been listening, we're doing the airport tonight. Then and now, we're joined by Samuel Johnson, the CEO of International Airport Development Company, and the CEO of DASPA, Mr. Benoit Badwell. And of course, you know Sam, you know Kenny, you know myself, Tanya. We're going to open up the lines right now. The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, and 616-4257. So give us a call. We are willing to hear what you have to say. Please keep it short. Caller, good evening. You're live on The Other Side.
Yeah, good evening.
Good
I would
evening.
like to know what's the name of the developer, please.
The developer. Isn't that MMCE?
Yes, the developer is
Yes,
MMCE.
Montreal Management Consultants Establishment. Thank you. Let's take another call. Caller, you're live.
Good evening, Tanya.
Hi, good evening.
How many questions I can ask this afternoon? Good evening to your guest. How
You
many
have-
questions can I ask, Tanya?
Well, I given you a minute. So see what you can ask
A
in
minute? No, listen, I have one question for you, but I'll start with the CEO. I want to ask Mr. CEO if all the different studies that is required before building an airport, if all these different studies have been completed, and I am talking about $1 billion estimate, that's what's going to cost. Now, if they do all these studies, how we know it's $1 billion is going to cost?
Okay.
And Tanya, I want to ask Mr. Will Foley-Bad, sorry, Mr. Badwill. Since we're talking about the airport, when are you going to give Vesco Jones back his job and tell him and for all them years you have them and sit down there, Tanya? And I have a question for you too, Tanya.
Oh, Lord.
Tanya, you know when the next election coming up? It look like something going on, Dominican Republic in the ice, Tanya. Anybody give you any hint that election they're going to call a snap election or something? Because I smell something bad, Tanya.
All right.
Anyway, I want to know if all these different studies have been completed
Okay. Thank you,
before they
caller.
come up with a final plan so that they can tell us. And then I have more question, because
Your
the
time up,
financing
I
of the
give you.
airport-
I give you a time. Your time up. You have to call me back. All right. Let's hear. Let's hear. Maybe Mr. Johnson can answer that because we were talking about a lot of these studies, and I think we touched on the economic feasibility. I didn't hear about an environmental impact study. So, what studies have been done? And yes, have they been done? That's what the man wants to know.
Yeah, so one of the things I said earlier on is that we're currently in the preparation phase. So part of that is validating, refreshing, and developing some of the studies that have been done in the past, as well as adding new. So, for example, although the last site is somewhere between 2 and 3 miles from the current site, the geotech study that was done for the last site, we do not anticipate a significant departure in terms of the soil types in this area. So that was a start, but we are going to do a refreshed geotechnical survey. I think the last one was done with about 40 or 50 different boreholes. The plan we have now is over 400-500 boreholes directly along the path of the runway. So that's one of them. The environmental impact assessment study is on the tail end. We got a draft report just before the Christmas, and there were some edits that had to be done. One was done as well for the other one that we looked at. So we're not throwing out and discarding, and that's something that I know.
What came out from the report?
And
What-
Sam,
what-
the master plan has been completed.
Yeah, and the master plan, is something that's been refreshed. The last one was done in 2017, again 2019. You will appreciate that what would have informed the master plan in 2017 would have been pre-Hurricane Maria and pre-COVID-19. So we need to ensure that the revised master plan takes into account some of these events that would not have formed part of the other one. In terms of the EIA, one of the things that I was going to say is that when you look at the environmental impact, the initial reports has flagged no major concerns, right? In terms of they've one of the things I've said over and over again, and EIA is not a go no go type of study. It really is a go or a yes but type study, right? So what I mean by yes but, yes, you can proceed, but you need to ensure that these mitigating factors or measures are put in place to limit the impact. One of the things that they looked for endemic species of plants or animals in the area. So are there like animals or plants that are unique to that location that you don't want to disturb? None were found. We've had individuals that are endemic, that are like endangered species that
But there were other animals that
there
made
were
it
other-
endemic.
it is now the thing about this side though, compared to the other one, is that a lot of the areas were former agricultural, like coconut type of planting area. So you see a lot of coconut trees in the area that were part of the coconut development. And it's at a lower elevation than the other one. So in terms of runoff from this one, the downstream impact of this is much less because there's less downstream, right? Because you're closer to the sea level with this site. So there are a number of these studies that are ongoing.
Will that assessment be made public? The
That's
environmental impact.
I don't see why not, but I think that's going to be a determination with the government. I think it's done on behalf of the government, so I don't anticipate a challenge to that. But I'll defer to Mr. Badwell on those calls. But the intent from an IDC standpoint is to ensure that all the studies that have to be done are being done. And one of the things that, given the time frame within which we're trying to develop this project, is that you will have some design work and tweaking going throughout the development of the project, right?
Let's take some more calls. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's take a call. We have a call coming in. Oh, did we lose you? Caller, you're live on the other side.
Yeah, good evening,
Good
lady,
evening.
and good evening, the panelists, gentlemen. I think the caller before has asked a very important question. The caller before asked that if you're talking about all the studies are not complete, how would you arrive at an estimate? And so we are not hearing answers for that. We are more hearing more technical terms. So can you please clarify that if all the studies are completed, if they are not complete, how did you arrive at $1 billion? That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
But the feasibility study, as well as I indicated, the master plan was completed in terms of Landrum and Brown and the work that they put into the project. And as has been indicated earlier, in 2017, there was a plan developed, and that plan, after the hurricane, was further developed and reviewed. And now we have a final plan, which we have, in fact, held discussions with the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority on. So that is something that was critical in terms of moving forward. So those things are there, and it is left to the principal to be able to make disclosure on that publicly. The other aspects, that the EIA and so on, those are in the review process in terms of what those plans are. And that is, again, like I said, the IADC is the oversight body. And once those things are finalized, we will review and advise the government accordingly, given the expertise that are within the various technical committees and so on to provide that advice. And the government will make its final decision. And then I guess from that standpoint, they will make a decision in terms of public dissemination of the kind of information that's available. But I am saying that the responsibility that there is in terms of the safeguards, the master plan, the feasibility study as has been indicated, the EIA, all of those considerations are there. And one of the advantages that we had for this project is that we were able to feed on the previous plans, and that were undertaken within the very same location, because the two airports are a few miles away from each other in terms of distance. So there would be some correlation in terms of some of the issues there. And that was a benefit, a tremendous benefit to moving in terms of that site. But nonetheless, verifications of certain things in terms of, as Sam indicated, that a lot more boreholes are going to be dug to be able to get in terms of the geotechnical information and verification of some of the things that have to be done. So to allay the fears of the caller, yes, we are being responsible in terms of doing all of what is required, because we have to satisfy the International Civil Aviation Organization and also the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Organization Authority to ensure that we do the things that are required for us to be able to get the airport approved in the final analysis.
All right. Let's take this call that's coming in. Caller, you're live on the other side.
Hi, good evening to you, Tanya. Good evening to you.
Hi, good
entire panel.
evening.
I have a question for Mr. Badwil. Mr. Badwil, is there a functioning scanner or X-ray machine at Douglas Charles Airport as we speak? Next question to Mr. Badwil again. Is there a restriction as to how much amount of arrowroot you could carry in your hand luggage? And there is. Hello?
We're listening, caller. We're listening.
Go ahead.
So you ask about arrowroot. What's the other one you ask about?
X-ray.
X-ray
scanner.
scanner. Okay.
Is there a functioning X-ray machine at the airport? And I'm waiting because I need to have a little dialogue with him.
Oh, you can have a dialogue on the phone. He'll be able to respond to
I
you.
can assure the caller that we do have fully functional X-ray units at the Douglas Charles Airport. As a matter of fact, we do have two for use of passengers. One at the executive lounge, the newly opened executive lounge. There is one there that is fully functional, brand new. And we have another one in the normal area where passengers utilize. We also have one within the luggage area, the checked luggage area. And the customs are also fitting in a new one to be able to scan incoming luggage coming into the state. So rest assured, caller, there are fully functional X-ray scanners at the airport to ensure that we meet with all of the international civil aviation requirements.
And what about the arrowroot?
Maybe that was delayed.
Well, the arrowroot is,
that is the link, I'm sure.
there is no restrictions in relation to arrowroot for export because arrowroot is an export commodity. To the best of my knowledge, there is no restrictions. So if that is something that is of concern, no, you'd have to check with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Trade as well as the customs. But clearly as I know it, there are no restrictions on that export product.
Okay. Do we have another call coming in? I don't see one coming. I had a question, though. I wanted to ask about the process of acquiring the property from the land and property owners. How has that been? Has it been smooth sailing? Tell us the honest truth. How are they behaving out there?
Well, I would start by saying to you that the government of Dominica had acquired well over 500 acres of land to be able to undertake this venture. And the government had been very responsible in terms of ensuring that in the acquiring process that the government, as you know, in Joe Burton, had to build homes for persons. And I can say if you were to do a survey in Wesley, you would hardly find somebody who would say that the government has not treated them over and above their expectations. And that is one of the things that I would say was very responsible of the government, in that no soil was being pushed or moved. Not one meter of soil was being pushed or moved, because the government wanted to ensure that the people of Wesley was taken care of. And as you can see, soon persons will be moving into these new homes. And then once they move into these new homes, then there will be clearance of their properties that they leave. So that in a responsible way, the government has ensured that there was not social displacement because of acquiring those properties and having those persons to leave without having somewhere to go. The same thing for farmers can be said, that lands were made available to farmers who lost their land holdings as a result of the lands that were acquired. So in terms of social responsibility, there was a very high stake by the government to ensure that persons who had to move, as a matter of fact, people are now asking to be moved because of the fact that, you know, they realize that the government has been very responsible in terms of the way it has approached moving persons and acquiring land from persons.
So
actually, let me just jump in on the tail end of that, doing from a relocation standpoint, and because I know there's been comments being made about, well, the prior government acquired land and now we're going to acquire a new set of land. The prior lands actually for the other project are actually being used as part of this project for the relocation of farmers. I know
we have a call coming. We have a call coming in. Let's just take that.
Sure.
Caller, you're live. Hello? Okay, caller, we cannot hear you. Give us a call
There's
back.
another one
Let's take
coming.
another. Caller, you're live on the other side. Please slow down wherever it is, a radio. No? Hello?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes.
I'm listening to your conversation with the gentleman in the studio, and I've yet to really feel comfortable with this guys being honest with the people. You have a project of $1 billion, and it takes the other side, some politically leaning people, to come to the public and tell them about the airport at this point in time. I heard earlier, if everything go as planned, next month they're gonna sign a paper, and they just keep talking about this developer, the developer, till a gentleman asks, who is the developer? Everything that people have heard so far is through grapevine. The government have yet to come out and publicly state their position, the acquisition of land, because there are people rumored that they haven't received payment, and the gentleman is saying the government has been very steadfast and very open and whatnot, and Mr. Badwell, because the man was just speaking. And all these things are more a political lean. That's what it sounds like to me. When you consider how the island is now, as far as the political wrangling going back and forth with the UWP and the Labour Party, most of all. The other parties are outspoken, but the biggest two.
Caller, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Well, what I'm saying is they are being disingenuous.
Okay.
It took that show that you on to come to the people to discuss $1 billion project, and they have yet to have all the soil tests done, what is the soil, the environmental impact, and all these other things that people are asking now. These things should have been out in the open, talked about, studied, and then you talk about building an airport.
Okay,
But you're building up an airport where you put in the cart in front of the horse. That sounds like some cocoa macaques to me. Thank you.
Okay, caller, thank you.
Okay, so I have a separate point, which is, it's a question to both you, Samuel, and to Mr. Badwell. Do you get this sense that Dominicans are aware or are fully aware of the scale, the magnitude of this project and the opportunity that presents? And it's a double pointer, because the other part is there the risk that we will get the traveling roadshow of the region once again entering Dominica, looking to take advantage of these opportunities, and our people have not yet grasped what is coming and what is going to be happening to the scale of where they are ready for it? Do you get that sense? And I'd like an honest answer from you.
I'll let Mr. Badwell go first, and I'll jump in.
Well, I hope that our people realize that this is going to be the single major or the largest project ever handled in Dominica. And they need to prepare themselves. And I think the government of Dominica has been saying so for a very long time in terms of people making preparation for that project. The question is that we're here to ensure that Dominicans take ownership of this project. That is one of the things we want to know. We want to happen. Simply because for the last 5+ decades, we all have been looking to try to get direct access into Dominica from not only the United States, but from Europe, Asia, and other areas. And it has been a clamoring thing for all of the political parties that is one subject matter that they want, an international airport. Now, what basically will happen is that in building the airport, it will provide jobs, it will provide economic opportunities for several different companies and persons from all strata. That is, skilled, non-skilled, and all other contractors will be able to have the ability to participate in this thing. And I'm hoping that the Dominican public, both those locally and overseas, some of them would want to participate in this project.
We have a call coming in. Let's just grab that.
Sorry, yeah, we're trying to.
Sorry.
Caller, you're live. Hello. Good evening. Caller, you're live on the other side.
Tanya, you tell me call back, so I keep my promise.
Yes.
Listen, let's talk about the money to finance the airport now. Tanya, we have 4-point-something billion out there. And I hear the chief executive of the government sign a contract with Anthony Hayden Mohammed something to sell passport to come up with $1 billion, Tanya. And they have, and guess what? When they sell not the passport, sorry, someone, and what is your
The
passport?
citizenship.
Any not passport. Sell the citizenship. Right? And when he sell it and he come up with the money, he has to lend it to Dominic and we have to pay him back, Tanya. Tanya, you think that is right?
Okay.
And
let's-
Mr. Badwell, I'm still
that's-
waiting for you to answer my question about Vescott Jones. When you going to pay the man and for all them time sit down and give the man back his job, Mr. Willfully Bad.
Can I
You
jump in?
we've gone through a 3-part series where we've tried to explain
The
to the
CBI,
general
yes.
public about how the CBI works, and unfortunately, it can't seep down quickly enough, and that's a process that will have to continue happening. But this idea that the developer is going to raise funds and then lend it back to the government is not true. That's a
Let's
fallacy.
go back to what you said, Kenny, about are we grasping the fact of what is to come? I get the impression from what Mr. Badwell said there that we are not, and he believes that the government is telling us to prepare. But I think the concern is not about telling us to prepare. It's about how are you, the government, preparing in terms of financially? What is the financial plan? These things should be available to the people. And I think that is the concern. Not about, oh, get ready to go work in construction and go and be working in the airport when it opens and be an engineer there, an architect or whatever it is. I think that's, yes, we are concerned about jobs as well, but it's also about, those plans. How did you get to that amount? What is
Tanya,
the plan? How much do we have now? What is the, what do you call it? What's the forecast for raising the rest of the money?
Tanya,
I
can
think
I
that's what they would like to know.
Let me jump in here, Tanya. Again, Mr. Badwell and Mr. Johnson, I apologize for some of the almost abuse that you gentlemen have taken coming on this program. And we invited you, so I have to take some responsibility. But, thanks so much for the work that you're doing to promote the country. Sam, I know you took a pay cut to come to Dominica to help with this. And from me, this hotelier, this Dominica, I want to thank you and Mr. Badwell for the tremendous work that you're doing. Some of the bitterness and the anger that you're hearing, people have been fed a certain narrative for a very long time. This gentleman genuinely believes, as absurd as that is to most logical people, that there's $4-point-something billion sitting somewhere. That is government's money. So there is this alternate narrative that people have been fed morning, noon, and night. It makes no sense, but they believe that. And so this is why we launched this program, Kenny and myself, just so we can kind of bring more information to this very audience. And it's going to take some time, as Kenny suggested. They're bitter, there's anger. Don't take that on. We really are reaching people. There are people out there that are happy to hear what you gentlemen have had to say. And for that matter, I will take what we've heard as encouragement to you to continue to go out there and to educate the public as you go forward, so that you bridge the gap, so that there's more information. People who want to be partisan and put spins on it, they have the right to do so.
Sam,
But I
there's
think
more-
it's good that you're putting this information on. Mr. Badwell, certainly I know this gentleman is asking about someone that has lost his job. I feel bad for the gentleman, but the matter is before the courts, and I don't think it's something that you can or we can discuss on this program. But again, it's the discipline and the knowledge of our people, so we apologize for that. But you gentlemen are coming in here to talk about something very, very important, and I just like to say thank you, because I know Kenny and I were the ones that invited you on the program, and we'll continue to invite people on the program to bring direct information to this audience so that they don't have to speculate so much. And that's
Let's
all.
take another call, Sam. We have
Let me
one
reassure-
coming in.
No, let me reassure Sam that we are focused on the job that we have to do in terms of providing
There's a
the
call-
oversight necessary. And
There's a
Hello?
call.
continue to
There's
do
a
so.
call on the line. Please go ahead, caller.
Yes, only do not allow me to ask Mr. Badi the question to get his response. So, if you say that the scanner at the airport is working, is functioning properly, why when somebody leaving, they would have to ask them to take off their shirt and them to scan? I mean, does that even make sense? You have on your sweater for them to ask you to take it out?
Take off your shirt. Can you get specific? Take off your shirt as in your bare back, or did you take off your sweater?
I mean, your sweater. Does that even make sense?
Okay, caller, that's a requirement. That is a requirement. that-
Wait, Mr. Battle, 1 second. Just continue, caller. So, what you're saying?
Yeah, Mr. Badwell, while I believe that airport will never build, but even let's just say build, you need to get you need to train these people properly to deal with passengers that live in the island. Because on Friday, I almost had it with one of them. For you to tell me, take off my sweater on me, I mean, I only had on a vest under my sweater and I'm cold. So you don't want to tell me take off I've traveled all around and I've never been asked to take off no part of my clothing, but just my shoes on my belt. That's all. I mean, once you go through that scanner, they're gonna see all what is within what you have in your pocket or what. I mean,
Okay.
what is going on? Are these people just trying to aggravate people for people to do some dumb shit?
Okay,
I mean,
okay,
tell
caller.
me.
All right, caller. Thank you. Now, Mr. Bao, that's a good, I mean, he's bringing a complaint, but it's a really good question to ask. Are we also preparing in terms of, training, getting ready to train all of those new staff that we're going to have in this new international airport? We have very limited time, so 1 minute. Because we have to
important.
Can you
Read
allow
here
Mr.
I'm not
Badman
hearing
to
you.
answer the question,
You're on
please?
mute, Sam.
Yeah,
Sam, you're on mute.
of all of the staff in terms of training and meeting with the new challenges, the issue of customer service, all of that has to be re-emphasized, and a whole new process. Because if we're going to have an airport of that size, then certainly you would have to retrain persons, and also the new persons coming on, you would have to establish a criteria in terms of those persons you hire. So yes, there are some challenges that we currently have to face, but I just want to put the caller to rest in terms of saying that if you carry in certain material, you have to relieve yourself of those materials. Now, a coat, as he indicated, is one of those things that would have to be scanned, because that is one of the requirements. So clearly, he would need to carry on the normal clothing that would allow him to go through the scanner with, but things like jackets and those kind of extra things that you carry, you would have to put it through the scanner.
Okay,
Right.
guys, we have to wrap up now. But Samuel Johnson, you want to make a last statement before you leave the program?
Sure. I mean, one thing I want to impress on everyone is that this is a project that is potentially transformative for Dominica. One of the reasons why I got involved in it is because I think it truly enables the country, and we've talked for many years. I think it will truly enable Dominica and the private sector in Dominica to jumpstart and take off, right? So it is a national project. Mr. Badril can tell you when the Douglas Charles Airport was built. There have been 3 successive different governments who have the benefit of the Douglas Charles Airport as infrastructure for the country. So I don't see it as a partisan thing. And actually, I one of the things I need to tell you guys, you probably should name your program not the other side, but you should call it both sides. So it is not pushing on other side, but really ensuring that there's dialogue from all sides or both sides. So people get on board, reach out, get information. I think as a country, as a destination, let's make this happen. I want for my children and my grandchildren to be able to come back to Dominica and enjoy their patrimony, enjoy their country as their other than being in Florida or Miami or one of the spaces. And I think Dominica, with all the ducks falling in line, can take off if we all chime in. This is not a project that is partisan. Let's get past this and get to some of the questions the hard questions we should be asking. Can we get more? Are we getting enough value? These are some of the areas that we should be pushing and feeling pressure for.
Great. We want to thank you guys for joining us, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Badwell. It was a really good show, really informative. Guys, we're out for tonight. See you next week, same time, same place, right here on Q95.
Thank you.
Thank you.